Chapter 1. Christmas was supposed to be safe. I used to bel I never thought my worst betrayal would happen on Christmas, in my own house, with my best friend smiling at the table. She didn't scream or steal. She took my voice, my story, and my life, all wrapped in kindness. That night, I was humiliated in silence, cut out of the photo, turned into a pity story she later sold for profit. My name is Eleanor, and this isn't a story about revenge. It's about what happens when you stop protecting the person who destroyed your Christmas. Every year, I kept the same ritual. A small dinner, never more than a handful of people, nothing fancy. A tree I decorated myself, the same ornaments year after year. Soft music playing in the background. Simple food that did not ask for attention. I told myself it was about tradition, but the truth was simpler and more fragile. It was proof that I still mattered to someone, that I was not invisible yet. Rachel Monroe was always part of that proof. We met in our early 20s, before marriages and mortgages and disappointments reshaped us. She was there when my husband packed his things and left with barely an explanation. She checked on me when my mother was diagnosed with heart disease. She listened when I switched careers in my late 30s and felt like I was starting over while everyone else moved ahead. For more than 20 years, Rachel was not just my best friend. She was my chosen family. That year, I needed Christmas more than ever. My company was restructuring, and for the first time in a decade, my position felt uncertain. My mother had been in and out of the hospital since November, and I spent evenings driving between work and her apartment, trying to sound calm while my chest stayed tight. I was exhausted in a way sleep did not fix. Still, I planned Christmas Eve the same way I always did because canceling it felt like admitting defeat. If Christmas disappeared, I worried something essential in me would go with it. Rachel noticed before I said anything. She called one afternoon while I was sitting in my car outside the hospital, watching snow collect along the edges of the windshield. She told me she could hear the strain in my voice and that I did not need one more thing to manage. "Let me handle Christmas this year," she said. "You do not need the stress. I can take care of everything. Just let me help you for once." It sounded kind. It always did. I felt relieved in a way that embarrassed me, like I had been waiting for permission to rest. I agreed without hesitation, not noticing how quickly the night stopped feeling like mine. A few days later, while my mother was undergoing tests, Rachel stopped by the hospital with coffee and a folder tucked under her arm. She said there were a couple of end-of-year forms related to the small investment project we shared, something about deadlines and signatures. She brushed it off as routine, told me it was nothing new, nothing urgent beyond timing. I signed where she pointed, barely reading the pages, my phone buzzing with updates from the nurse. I trusted her. I had trusted her for half my life. On Christmas Eve, Rachel arrived early. She said she wanted to get everything set up before the others came. When I walked into my own living room, she was already rearranging chairs, moving place settings, checking her phone. She smiled and told me to sit down, that I looked tired, that she had it handled. I laughed it off, but something in my stomach tightened. I felt like a guest in my own house, hovering while someone else decided how the night would unfold. The guests arrived one by one, familiar faces, friends who had shared holidays with me for years. The energy was loud and cheerful, the kind that fills space quickly. Rachel floated between conversations, glass in hand, touching arms, laughing easily. She remembered everyone's stories, everyone's preferences. I stayed near the kitchen, refilling drinks, warming food, doing what needed to be done. No one asked me to sit. At the table, Rachel guided the conversation. She told stories from the year, and more than once those stories turned toward me. She spoke about how hard things had been for me lately, how strong I was, how proud she was of me for getting through such a difficult season. Her tone was warm, almost affectionate, but there was something else underneath it, a softness that felt like pity, a familiarity that stripped me down in front of everyone. "This year has really tested her," Rachel said at one point, smiling in my direction. "She's had so much on her plate. Health issues, work stress, just a lot. We all need to keep an eye on her." People nodded. Someone reached over and squeezed my hand. No one asked if I wanted my struggles laid out like that. No one challenged the way Rachel framed me as fragile, as someone being carried rather than standing on her own. I smiled because that's what I had learned to do when discomfort made other people uneasy. When dinner ended and the group shifted toward games and gifts, Rachel quickly moved things along. Chairs shifted, seats were reassigned. I found myself standing while others settled in, holding plates, collecting napkins. Someone handed me an empty glass and asked if there was more wine. I did not sit back down. No one noticed. Later, someone suggested a photo. Rachel quickly stepped to the center, pulling everyone close. She told me to stand off to the side so the frame would look balanced. I did as she asked without thinking. The phone lifted, the flash went off. Moments later, I saw the image on her screen. I was there, technically, but half cut off, my shoulder barely visible at the edge. She posted it immediately with a caption about gratitude and friendship, about being there for the people you love. Gift exchange came next. Everyone had thoughtful packages, things that reflected conversations and inside jokes. When it was my turn, Rachel handed me a small bag. Inside was a generic candle and a card that talked about strength and perseverance. It was kind. It was also impersonal in a way that stung. I smiled, thanked her, held the bag while my hands trembled slightly. Across the room, I caught a few glances that slid away too quickly, like my discomfort made other people uncomfortable. The hardest part was not the gift. It was the silence that followed everything else. No one spoke up. No one shifted the focus. The night continued as if nothing had happened, laughter filling the space where my voice should have been. I realized then that Christmas hadn't broken because I was alone. It broke because I had been surrounded by people who watched me disappear and said nothing. Chapter 2. The Paperwork That Stole My Voice. Something shifted in the days after Christmas. Not loudly, not in a way I could point to right away, but enough that my body noticed before my mind did. The house was quiet again, the decorations still up, the lights still blinking at night, yet the warmth from the holiday was gone. I went back to work, back to routines, back to hospital visits with my mother, but a low tension followed me everywhere, like a noise just below hearing. Rachel Monroe stopped calling the way she used to. When she did text, her replies were shorter, flatter, almost efficient. I told myself she was busy. She always was. She consulted for multiple small businesses across the Midwest, always juggling projects, always needed somewhere. Still, I felt the distance and tried to ignore it, the same way I ignored small aches until they became impossible to move around. The first concrete sign came through my email, or rather, the absence of it. For years, anything related to the small investment project Rachel and I shared came to both of us. Bank updates, accounting summaries, quarterly notices. I did not monitor them obsessively, but I noticed patterns. Late one afternoon, while sorting through messages at my desk, I realized I had not seen anything in weeks. No statements, no updates, nothing. I searched my inbox, then my archive, then my spam folder. Still nothing. I forwarded the most recent statement I could find from an old thread and noticed something that made my chest tighten. The distribution list no longer included me. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Then I told myself not to overreact. Systems glitch, human error. Innocent explanations were easier to live with. That evening, I texted Rachel, keeping my tone light, almost apologetic. I told her I thought something might be wrong with my email filters and asked if she had seen anything strange. She replied about an hour later. "It is probably a system glitch. Do not worry, I will look into it." There was a heart emoji at the end. I stared at it, unsettled by how familiar the reassurance felt, like something she had said many times before. to many people. 2 days later, I called the accounting firm we used. The receptionist hesitated when I gave my name, then transferred me to someone else. That person asked if Rachel had approved the call. Approved. The word landed hard. I hung up and sat there, hands on the steering wheel, engine off, snow piled along the curb. I still did not want to believe what my instincts were telling me. I wanted facts, something solid, something I could hold without feeling like I was inventing a story to hurt myself. That was how I ended up in a small conference room downtown a week later, sitting across from an attorney named Michael Harris and a CPA named Denise Walker. I told them I just wanted to review some paperwork for peace of mind. I said it casually, as if this were routine, as if my life felt like it was slowly tilting. Michael spread the documents across the table carefully, lining them up as if order itself might soften what they contained. Denise adjusted her glasses and opened her laptop. Neither of them rushed. That alone made my stomach tighten. They explained the structure first. The investment was held under a limited liability company called Cedar Lake Health Solutions, LLC. It had been created to manage a shared service contract tied to one of the wellness initiatives Rachel and I had discussed years earlier. Rachel and I were both listed as members. On paper, we always had been. Michael paused and tapped a page with his pen. "This is where things changed," he said. In late December, an amendment had been filed to the operating agreement. The company shifted from a member-managed structure to a manager-managed one. A formal resolution appointed Rachel as the sole manager and authorized signer. Denise explained what that meant in plain language. Rachel now had full authority to communicate with banks, vendors, and clients. She could approve fees, sign contracts, and make financial decisions on behalf of the company without my consent. I told them that could not be right. I said I never agreed to give up my voice. Michael slid another page toward me. My signature was at the bottom, clear, undeniable. I felt my throat tighten as memory rushed back in fragments. The hospital room, the low hum of machines, my mother asleep with her mouth slightly open, Rachel standing near the window with a folder, saying we needed to sign before year-end to avoid complications, saying it would keep things smooth, saying it didn't change anything important. Michael spoke gently. It was not forgery. The document was valid. Consent given under stress was still consent unless fraud could be proven. Denise added that nothing in the paperwork violated the law. It was clean, precise, brutal. I stared at my own handwriting, feeling something cold spread through my chest. Rachel didn't take anything by force. She took it with clauses and deadlines in language I didn't question because I trusted her. Denise pointed to another section. Under the manager compensation clause, a consulting fee had been approved. It was paid monthly to a separate entity registered under Rachel's name. Entirely permissible, entirely legal. I asked what that meant in plain terms. Michael said it meant the company was paying Rachel to manage an asset we both helped create. Denise added that the money came off the top, before any distributions. I nodded slowly. My ears rang. Rachel hadn't just taken control, she'd turned my involvement into her income stream. When I left the meeting, I did not call her. I sat in my car instead, parked along the curb, watching people hurry past with their coats pulled tight. I felt hollow, like something essential had been removed without my permission. Later that night, I called Michael again. I asked what my options were. He didn't sugarcoat it. I could challenge the agreement, but without clear evidence of deception, it would be difficult, costly, public. He warned me about defamation, about emotional reactions that could backfire and damage me more than her. I listened. I took notes. I asked what I should do instead. Document everything. Dates, emails, messages. Don't speculate, just collect facts. So I did. I pulled email headers, I saved calendar invites, I noted the exact dates my mother was hospitalized. I archived messages Rachel sent while standing beside me in that room, messages full of reassurance and urgency. I built a timeline piece by piece, not with anger, but with precision. Rachel sent another message a few days later, saying she hoped I was feeling better after the holidays. She said she loved me and was always here. I did not reply. That night, I sat in my car outside the hospital parking lot, the engine idling, my phone resting face up on the passenger seat. The screen glowed with her name, her words soft and familiar. For the first time, I saw them for what they were. Not comfort, just wrapping paper. Chapter 3. She built her brand on my breakdown. Clarity did not feel like relief. It felt like waking up in a house you thought you knew, then realizing someone had been rearranging the furniture while you slept. Everything was technically still there, but nothing sat where it used to. I went back to work the next morning and did what I had always done when life felt unstable. I performed. I answered emails. I joined meetings. I smiled at coworkers in hallways. From the outside, I looked steady. Inside, I was recalibrating every assumption I had made about the past 20 years. By lunchtime, my phone showed 3 missed calls and a handful of unread messages. These were people who used to check in without thinking, who sent me jokes and articles and holiday photos. Now the messages were cautious, spaced out, written like drafts that had been revised too many times. I stared at the screen and felt the unfamiliar sting of being avoided. It was not dramatic. It was worse than that. It was quiet. When I finally called one of them back, Jenna Whitaker answered on the second ring. Jenna and I had known each other for years through the same small circle of friends. We were not inseparable, but we had shared enough dinners and holidays to feel permanent in each other's lives. "Hey," she said, her voice careful. "I just wanted to check in." "You called," I said. I kept my tone light, the way women learn to do when they sense something is wrong but do not want to invite it closer. There was a pause, the kind that tells you someone is choosing their words. "Jenna said you have been having a rough time," Jenna said, "with everything. We did not want to overwhelm you." My fingers tightened around the phone. "What did she say exactly?" I asked. "Just that you are under a lot of pressure," Jenna said. "Money stuff, your mom, work. She said she is trying to protect you and that maybe the rest of us should give you space." Protect? Space? The words landed heavily. "Careful?" I repeated. "Not like that," Jenna rushed. "She was being kind. You know how Rachel is. She loves you." I almost laughed, but it would have come out sharp. "I'm fine," I said. "I appreciate you calling." "We were thinking of doing a small dinner next week," Jenna added. "But Rachel thought maybe you would not want the pressure right now." Pressure? As if my presence would make the room heavier, as if I were something fragile that might crack if handled wrong. "Thanks," I said. "I will let you know." After I hung up, I sat very still and watched my reflection in the darkened office window. Rachel had not only taken control of paperwork, she had taken control of the story of me. She had made me into a soft, cautionary tale, the kinds people whispered about in lowered voices, the kinds that made them feel grateful it was not them. That afternoon, I emailed Michael Harris and Denise Walker. I asked if we could meet again. Michael replied within the hour. "Tomorrow at 9, bring everything you have." The next morning, I walked into Michael's office carrying a tote bag that felt heavier than it should have. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, calendar invites, photos from Christmas, copies of operating agreements, and handwritten notes I had started keeping late at night when sleep would not come. Denise arrived with her laptop and a legal pad. She gave me a small nod that felt like respect. Michael closed the door and sat across from me. "Tell me what you want," he said. I hesitated. The honest answer was that I wanted my friends back, but that version of the world no longer existed. "I want to protect myself," I said. "I want facts, and I want to be careful." Denise clicked her pen. "Good," she said. "Facts are clean. Facts hold up." We spent the next 2 hours building a timeline. Denise asked me to walk through my mother's hospital stays, and I pulled up my calendar, reading dates out loud. Admissions, tests, discharges, follow-ups. Michael asked when Rachel had brought the paperwork. "December 28th, I said. "Late afternoon. My mom was waiting for imaging. Rachel showed up with coffee and said it was time-sensitive." "Did she explain what it was?" Michael asked. She said it was end-of-year compliance, I replied, that it would keep things smooth. She said it did not change anything important. Denise looked up from her screen. The amendment was filed December 29th, she said. Manager fee authorization started January 1st. Hearing it laid out so plainly made my stomach turn. It was not messy, it was organized, it was planned. Michael raised a hand. "We are not deciding what to do today," he said. "We are building a record. You need to be disciplined. Do not speak loosely about this, not to friends, not online. She could claim you damaged her business if you make statements you cannot prove." I nodded. "I don't want to destroy her," I said. "I just want the truth to be safe." Denise slid a folder toward me. "Put everything in one place," she said. "Screenshots with dates, emails with headers, copies of documents, social posts too. Not because they are illegal, because they show pattern." "Pattern?" I repeated quietly. Michael leaned back. "Rachel is shaping perception. That matters." When I left the office, I felt something shift inside me. Not hope, not anger, something steadier, like my spine had remembered it was allowed to hold me up. That evening, while I was sitting beside my mother's bed, my phone buzzed with an email. The subject line made my breath catch. "Turning Crisis into Clarity Workshop Invitation." The sender was a professional association I joined years ago and barely remembered. I almost deleted it, assuming it was generic networking spam. Then I saw Rachel's name listed as the featured speaker. My thumb hovered, then I opened it. Rachel's photo filled the screen. Polished, warm, trustworthy. Her bio talked about transformation, resilience, ethical leadership. Then I saw the testimonial beneath it. "I was a single woman after divorce, drowning in work stress and the family health crisis. I thought my life was collapsing. Rachel helped me rebuild my mindset and secure my future. I will never forget what she did for me." My chest tightened. The words were not mine, but the details were mine. Divorce, family health crisis, work stress. It was my life stripped down and repackaged as marketing. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. At home later, I printed the pages and added them to my folder. My hands did not shake this time. I felt cold, focused. The next day, Rachel called. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hey," she said brightly. "I've been trying to catch you. How are you holding up after the holidays?" "I'm managing," I said. "I worry about you," she replied. "You disappear when things get heavy." I pictured her at my Christmas table, smiling while she told people I was struggling. "I've been busy," I said. She laughed softly. "Same, actually. I wanted to tell you something exciting. I'm hosting a workshop next month. It's a big step for me, and I would love for you to be there." "A workshop?" I said. "Yes," she said. "It's about turning hard seasons into breakthroughs. And listen, if you're comfortable, you could say a few words. People would connect with you. You have such a powerful story." My chest tightened, not with fear, but with something colder. "You want me on stage?" I said. "Only if you want," she said quickly. "I just think it would be beautiful. It would show everyone you made it through." I looked at the folder on my table, the dates, the documents, the screenshots, the clean lines of proof. "I will be there," I said. Rachel exhaled like she had won. "I knew you would support me," she said. "I knew you would not let me down." I paused. "I will be there," I repeated, "but I will not be used." The line went quiet for half a second, just long enough for me to hear the change in her breathing. "Used?" she said lightly. "Eleanor, what does that mean?" "It means I'm coming as myself, not as a story." She laughed again, too loud. "Of course," she said. "You're tired. We'll talk later. Get some rest. Love you." The call ended. The silence that followed didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like space. I sat at the table and added the workshop invitation and slide deck to my folder. Then I closed it with both hands. For the first time since October, I didn't feel like I was being carried by someone else's narrative. I felt like I was holding the thread. Chapter 4. I didn't expose her. I stopped protecting her. Enough did not mean safe. It meant I could breathe without feeling like I was shrinking. In the weeks leading up to the event, my life settled into a strange calm. Emails arrived. Meetings filled my calendar. My mother's health stabilized enough that the hospital visits became shorter, less urgent. On the surface, everything looked manageable. Underneath, I was preparing myself for a moment I could no longer avoid. The event was held at a conference hotel outside Chicago, the kind of place designed to make people feel important the moment they walked in. Neutral colors, warm lighting, quiet music playing just loud enough to suggest success. I arrived early, dressed simply, nothing sharp or dramatic. I did not want attention. I wanted to be present in my own body, not performing, not disappearing. Rachel Monroe owned the room the moment she walked in. Her dress was perfectly tailored. Her hair fell into place without effort. People turned toward her instinctively, smiles ready. Clients, prospects, a few familiar faces from our shared circle. I watched her accept compliments with practiced ease, touching arms, laughing softly, promising follow-ups. If I had not lived inside the truth of her, I might have believed every word she had ever said about herself. I checked in and took a seat near the side, close enough to hear, far enough to observe. I rested my hands in my lap and reminded myself to breathe. The presentation began smoothly. Rachel spoke about resilience, about ethical leadership, about guiding others through uncertainty. She used language that felt carefully chosen, words polished until they shined. She told stories without names, but I recognized the shape of my own life in her examples. Divorce, caregiving, professional pressure. Each example landed like a quiet confirmation of how thoroughly she had rehearsed my pain. About halfway through, she paused and smiled toward my section of the room. "There is someone here tonight who embodies everything I am talking about," she said. "A close friend, someone who went through one of the hardest years of her life and came out stronger." A few heads turned. I felt my chest tighten, not with fear, but with recognition. "I would love for her to come up and say a few words," Rachel continued, "just to share what transformation can look like." The microphone was passed down the aisle toward me. The room shifted, chairs creaked, conversation stopped. For a brief second, I felt the old instinct rise, the urge to protect her, to smooth things over, to step into the role she had written for me. I stood anyway. The microphone felt heavier than it should have. I did not step fully onto the stage. I stayed where I was, my feet planted, my body grounded. "I am grateful for support," I said, keeping my voice steady, "but I am careful with stories that are not mine to market." The silence that followed was immediate, not awkward, not hostile, just still. Rachel laughed lightly and tried to move on. "Of course," she said, "we all tell our stories differently." I lifted my eyes and added one sentence, not loud, not sharp, just true. "The hardest part was not the year I survived," I said. "It was realizing someone I trusted was profiting from my pain." No one clapped, no one laughed. The air felt thin, like the room itself had paused to listen. Rachel nodded too quickly and turned back to her slides. Her pace shifted after that. She spoke faster, her rhythm slightly off. She finished the segment and opened the floor for questions. A man near the front raised his hand. He introduced himself as a compliance officer for a regional healthcare group. "In your case study," he said, "you mentioned stepping in before year-end to help secure approvals and stabilize operations. Can you clarify the timing of that intervention?" Rachel answered without hesitation. "It was early December," she said, "before things escalated." I felt my pulse slow. The date was wrong. The man frowned slightly. "Interesting," he said, "because the filings I reviewed show the authorization occurring at the end of December." Rachel blinked. "Well," she said, smiling, "the work began earlier, of course." Another hand went up. "And the compensation structure," the woman asked, "was that in place prior to the transition?" Rachel hesitated, just a fraction of a second. "It evolved," she said, "as needs changed." No one challenged her directly. They did not have to. The questions kept coming, precise, neutral, curious in a way that did not feel friendly anymore. I said nothing. I did not correct her. I did not offer details. I stayed still and let the facts she had shaped begin to drift apart on their own. When the session ended, people clustered into small groups. I stepped into the lobby, my hands cold despite the heat inside. A woman from our shared circle approached me, her expression tired, uncertain. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "She told it differently." "I understand," I replied. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I am honest," I said. "That is enough." Across the room, I saw Rachel pacing near the refreshment table, her phone pressed to her ear. Her smile was gone. When she noticed me, she ended the call and walked quickly over, pulling me toward a quiet corner. "Did you plan that?" she whispered. "I planned to stop being used," I replied. "You embarrassed me," she said, her voice tight. "You know what this could cost me." "I know what it already cost me," I replied. She stared at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time. There was no apology in her eyes, only calculation. "You could have handled this privately," she said. "I did," I said, "for months." She opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, she had nothing prepared. Later that night, my phone buzzed with messages I didn't answer. One was from a client of hers saying they needed to pause a partnership pending internal review. Another was from a mutual friend asking if we could talk soon. I left the hotel alone and drove home through quiet streets. The radio stayed off. The city lights blurred past the windshield. I did not feel victorious. I did not feel cruel. I felt lighter, like I had finally set something down that was never mine to carry. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat there for a moment before turning the engine off. The night was still. For the first time since this began, I did not feel like I had destroyed anything. I had simply stopped holding it together for her. Chapter 5. Christmas came back to me. The first Christmas that came after everything ended did not arrive with celebration or relief. It came quietly, almost cautiously, like something unsure whether it was welcome back in my life. I noticed it in small ways, in the fact that I did not flinch when the boxes of decorations came down from the attic, in the way December passed without my chest tightening every time I saw lights in someone else's window. For the first time in years, the season felt neutral, and neutrality felt like safety. I was 46 by then. I lived in the same house outside Columbus, Ohio, drove the same car, worked the same job. From the outside, my life looked unchanged. Inside, nearly everything had shifted. I no longer measured my worth by how useful I was to other people. I no longer confused endurance with loyalty. I no longer believed that silence was the same thing as peace. On Christmas Eve, I hosted dinner again, not the way I used to. There was no elaborate planning, no menu designed to impress, no sense that the night had to prove anything. I invited 4 people, 2 coworkers who had quietly become friends over the past year, a neighbor who brought pie every December without ever asking if it was needed, and Jenna Whitaker, who stood at my door holding a bottle of wine like she was not sure she still belonged there. She hesitated before stepping inside. "I should have reached out sooner," she said. "I believed what I was told. I am sorry." "You came," I said. "That counts." The evening unfolded gently. Soup simmered on the stove, music played low in the background, conversation moved easily without sharp edges or forced laughter. No one asked me to explain myself. No one tried to summarize my year for me. I realized halfway through the night that I was not bracing for anything. There was no moment where I needed to defend my boundaries or manage someone else's discomfort. The house felt like mine again. When the dishes were cleared and people lingered over dessert, I caught my reflection in the dark window. I looked older than I had the year before, but steadier too, present in a way I had not been when I was constantly trying to hold space for someone else's narrative. A few days later, I met with Michael Harris for the final time. The conference room felt familiar now, almost neutral. The stack of papers on the table was thinner than it had been before. We had reached an agreement, a clean withdrawal from Cedar Lake Health Solutions, LLC. No lawsuit, no public conflict, no spectacle. I sold my remaining interest at a reduced value. It was not fair, but it was final. Michael looked at me across the table. "You are giving up money," he said. "I need to be sure you understand that." "I do," I said. "I am not buying peace. I'm reclaiming my voice." He nodded and slid the last document toward me. I read every line slowly. I signed with a steady hand. When it was done, he closed the folder and extended his hand. "Most people do not handle situations like this with restraint," he said. "Most people are taught to explode," I replied. I chose to step away. When I walked out of his office, the air felt sharp and clear. I sat in my car for a moment, letting the quiet settle. I thought about the money I had left behind. I thought about the years of friendship that had ended without apology or repair. And then I thought about how much energy I had spent trying to stay small enough to be useful to someone who benefited from my silence. The loss still hurt. That did not disappear. Losing Rachel was not just losing a friend, it was losing 20 years of shared history, inside jokes, old photos, the sense that someone had known every version of me and stayed. Grief does not disappear just because clarity arrives. But the self-blame was gone. I no longer replayed conversations, searching for the moment where I should have spoken differently or trusted less. I no longer asked myself how I could have prevented what happened. Friendship does not turn another person into a product. Care does not require control, and love does not profit from pain. Once I accepted that, the rest fell into place. I heard about Rachel occasionally, always through distance. Someone mentioned she was still consulting but with fewer clients. Another said a project had been delayed after a long review process. Nothing dramatic, nothing cruel, just less certainty, less shine. I felt no satisfaction in it, only recognition. When a life is built on managing perception, truth does not have to attack to do damage. It only has to exist. On Christmas night, after everyone left, I moved slowly through the house, turning off lights, rinsing cups, folding the quiet back into the rooms. I lit a single candle and sat on the couch with a blanket around my shoulders. The tree lights blinked softly, reflecting in the window. There was no performance left to maintain, no audience, just stillness. For the first time in a long while, Christmas did not feel like a test I could fail. It did not feel like something I had to earn by being agreeable or resilient or useful. It felt like rest. I blew out the candle and let the darkness settle. I understood then that healing did not mean forgetting what happened. It meant no longer arranging my life around it. It meant choosing boundaries over bitterness and truth over volume. If you have ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, you do not need rage to survive it. Sometimes the strongest response is choosing honesty, protecting your boundaries, and walking away without holding the lie together for them.